Okay, hello everyone. So this is going to be our August focus tutorial. This is a Rottweiler's ear. So the black makes it a bit easier because it defines, highlights and shadows very nicely. And some very nice swooping hair details here. Some good direction, and also this will play a part in our in-depth tutorial for August as well, which is also a short haired breed, which is a Vizsla. So we've done a long hair fur tutorial of a grey horse with black markings. This should be simpler because it is short hair. It's still got very nice fur details in the short hair. With our in-depth tutorial we did with the show jumper, it was also short hair, but it was not as defined. Couldn't really go much into detail as we will in this one. So the materials I will be using will obviously be as always. Let me just get all my different types here. So majority of my pencils are Cretacolor, and then I've got a few Koh-I-Noor, and then I've got one random Lira Rembrandt pencil as well. I will be using with my graphite powder. I've got the Cretacolor graphite powder here. I will be using that and be applying it with either a blending stump or this is just a makeup brush, soft bristles. Anything with very soft bristles would work. I think the makeup brushes work very well for that. And then I've got my Tombow mono eraser, and then as well as a Putty Eraser. These two I will be using interchangeably. Majority for the small details I'll be using my mono eraser. For softer, more I won't say bigger erasing, but for softer erasing I'll be using my Putty Eraser. Yeah, and that's that. So we will only be focusing on the ear itself, not the adjacent fur surrounding it. There is a little bit of the Rottie's neck that will actually be a very good tutorial on its own, but we will get to it. Still lots of things that we can do, but yeah, we're just focusing on the ear, not the surrounding parts, only this little defining shadow, and then the majority of the ear we will go. Okay, so I have uploaded the line drawing as well as materials used, and the reference will be uploaded before the video itself, so you can just check out the previous post and everything will be available for you. This is on a little A5 sized paper. I just took an A4 in half and that's my size. So you can do it as big or as small as you'd like. I will also put up the dimensions of the paper itself in the description box of the with the line drawing and the reference. So we are going to get started. So I'm going to put down a base of my graphite powder just to lay down an initial layer. I prefer doing that. If you've watched any of my previous tutorials, you would know that this is my preferred method majority of the times. I do switch it up, so it's not always set in stone, but this is general rule that I will do this step before I apply any pencil to paper. And then I'm just going to go in with a blending stump just to define out the contours of the ear as well. So I've been playing around a bit with filming settings and filming placements. I think I finally figured out something that will work, that is also comfortable and optimal, because the graphite powder is very difficult to film. You can't just put the lights on the camera in any spot you'd like. So I've got to play around with it a bit. I had a few optimal ones, not so much. I think I've figured it out a little bit. So I'm going to take on a blending stump a bit of graphite powder. I'm just going to start marking out the shadow, the darker areas first. I'm going to leave the highlighted areas alone. I did make some markings with a pencil where certain things are in the drawing. Contours, little shapes and ridges, so we're just going to putting that in. And this just also helps your line drawing kind of disappears quickly. This just helps solidifies kind of your extra layer of line drawing. So hopefully this setting of works a bit better. This is on my big drawing table. So hopefully this works a bit better to eliminate the shine in all areas of the drawing. I am filming on a slight bit of an angle, but it wouldn't hinder your view or wouldn't distort the drawing too much, because I don't want to put it on too much of an angle and then you won't get the right picture. So hopefully this works. I mean, it's all just a work in progress, still figuring it out. This Patreon page will also help me raise a bit of funds to get myself a proper camera, which is quite expensive. Especially, I'm one of those people that believe if you're going to do it, especially if you're going to buy expensive things, important things, you might as well do it right and buy good quality first time, rather than struggling with something used and not quite what you're looking for. So, but the phone is doing a good job and is meeting my expectations. So it will work for now. So, but this is kind of the goal. There's a few other things, like for instance, kind of the pencils, which are stupidly expensive, and the paper as well. I'm also been looking into pastel pencils, but that's a bit later down the line, because the pastel mat is also stupidly expensive. But that's artist problems for you. We all like the expensive things. So I'm gonna let's take my 2B pencil and just sharpen it up a bit. So it's my 2B, my little only Leroy Rembrandt pencil. And we are gonna start slowly mapping out direction of the fur. With the first initial layers, we are going to take much care in which way our fur is going, because we want to establish that right now in the beginning, so that you will continually, as you build up the layers, be drawing the fur in the correct direction, and that they'll build up in the right direction with each other. So I'm just going to go around quickly. This is going to be a quick initial sketch just to solidify the markings we made with the graphite powder. And if you look at the reference, this little area has a bit of lighter, it's not completely dark as it is here in the middle. So just bear that in mind. You kind of these initial layers helps you to study your reference, see things, notice things, start making mental notes about maybe how you're going to approach certain things, maybe problem areas, areas that you will see that will need more work as you go along. That's why I like these initial layers. Don't put too much pressure on you as an artist to do it completely right, but it does help you just to study your reference, get to know it a little better. So yeah, that's also kind of the reasoning behind why I do it. It helps me quickly go through the whole of the area I'm going to draw, and it just helps me figure out a plan without putting too much pressure to get it right immediately. And I think it's a very good thing just to do and to start with. So the ear is actually very nice because it's got hair going in all sorts of directions, depending on the contours. So it's a very actually good example of direction of fur and drawing it in the correct direction. So we're just looking at that. There we go. Now I'm going to take my 2H pencil and we're just going to kind of start filling in the layers. So you can see it's not full of the, as I've mentioned in previous tutorials, the Leroy Rembrandt isn't as dark as my other B pencils. So this 2H isn't far off its value, but as I go over the B pencil with the 2H, it will just darken up that area that I've already put down. So I won't lose what I did with the 2B. I'll just darken it up as I'm going on over its top with other pencils. So I'm still keeping my strokes very loose, not really being too precise. And also this reference has got really nice softer areas such as here, and also down here in the middle where it kind of fades the details, and they could do rougher areas over here. Also very nice soft shaded details down there. So I actually don't draw a lot of dogs. If you've been following me over on my Instagram for a while, I've maybe done one. I've done about one. But the concept of drawing dogs, it's not very foreign to me. I love dogs. And they're not, horses have a lot to them drawing wise. So it's quite good preparation for things. I don't find them too challenging. So I'm just taking graphite powder on a brush. I really love dogs. There's some very cool dog references with some very nice little extras added to them that we'll be going through. Some of them I will do smaller versions for you, but there's certain that I want to make, some of them that I kind of want to make a series of on larger scale. It will just take too long if I have to make a tutorial out of it. I want to go bigger. I've got a big leopard on the easel that I haven't worked on in probably over a month that I need to get going on. So probably after this little quick tutorial, I'll work on that for the day. So I'm definitely trying to, just need to find the balance to do everything. Give equal time to everything. There we go. You can still see the direction of everything, and there's still areas that have been highlighted and pointed out. So the powder just helps blend everything in. So I'm going to go in with my 2B pencil again. Yes. Now we're going to just slowly add in the detail as we go along. Obviously we haven't really touched our eraser for highlights. That will get on a bit later. Not really important just now. We're just adding little details so long. Extending some of our shadowed areas, defining up the ear even more. Already starting to leave in some highlights with a pencil. And I'm not really using the sharp tip, I'm using the one that's been worked down a bit. So certain areas you'll see I'll use the sharper point of my pencil, and just to add more defining contours or direction of fur, just to help detail it out. And it also helps when you're doing these longer strokes to keep the pencil quite backward up to the back, and that will just help you have a more flowing movement to your hand. Okay, now I'm going to take a darker pencil and I'm going to take a 3B. And I'm just going to start defining the shadow area. And as well as the surrounding kind of darker fluffs of hair. Still not applying too much pressure, keeping it very soft and light. And just building up, there we go, the contours and everything. Keeping very close grip to the front of the pencil, and this will just help me with the shorter strokes that I'm applying, giving me a tad bit more control than if I was to keep it here. There we go. Let's go Also inside this little tuft. So I'm just looking at the darkest little marks within the reference. It's not much in here. Softer shadowed areas here. There you go. Now I'm going to take the dirty side of my blending stump, and we're just going to go in and blend on over. Now after this step I will be going in with an eraser, and now then we'll start working on defining the with highlights and not just with shadowed pencils, not shadowed pencils, with shadows we put in with the pencils. I'm also going to just soften up this edge here. Really soften it up because it's got very nice highlighted little tufts. So the reason I'm using the dirty side is it just will aid in adding another extra layer of like a glaze over the top without actually adding extra powder, and it will just help blend in the B pencils that we used in the previous layer. And this will also just help a little eliminate a bit of that shine, just a tad bit. Here we go. Now I'm going to take my mono eraser. You can use your putty eraser with a very fine point. You can use bits and pieces of normal eraser that you've cut up for yourself into points. Really any type of eraser that you can do a bit of precision erasing with will work just fine. So I'm going to start in the bottom, work my way from left to right, and I'm going to look at the highlights itself and kind of also sketchy strokes. Since the majority of the places where we're going to put in the highlights are just powder, it will erase quite easily. And you will use exact same motions as you do with the pencils with your eraser. That will just keep your flow and the the look the same as it would with the pencils. I'm gonna kind of work with the focus tutorials more from kind of easier, like, okay, the previous third tutorial wasn't in any way easy, but for instance, start with a short haired ear, then maybe a white hair ear that's a bit longer, and then kind of your last kind of ears for maybe dogs would be your kind of more spaniel type ears. Maybe poodles, doodles, ears with a bit of different texture. Maybe very, very long haired breeds. Maybe even breeds with no hair, like for instance, if we're going to do cats, we still haven't done a cat. So maybe do like Maine Coons or Ragdolls and Norwegian forest cats. And then very short hairs, breeds, different markings. Then you've got obviously your Sphinx cat that has absolutely no hair. If I find a good reference of one, I think it will be a fun little tutorial because it's got no fur. So you kind of got to think a bit on your feet on how you're going to relay this animal hairless cat. So there's still quite a lot of things to do. A lot of different versions of the same parts, the same thing, that kind of there's always something that will be different and throw you kind of off and be like, oh, make you think a little bit and say, oh, I don't know, I have to think a bit about how I'm going to tackle this, you know. As you can see with the erasing, it's already forming a bit of softness, a bit of even more definition. And if you watched a few of my tutorials, you would know now that this is kind of the method I prefer using. The layering, you kind of get used to it and habit, and you quite know when to start your highlighting or erasing layer, or when you should start adding your shadows. So yeah, so already as you can see, the ear's got very good form, it's got contours, it's already got some fur detail, fur direction. It's a very good initial layer that is already defined your major points, your major anatomy. You can tell which way the hair is flowing, so that's very important. That's what your initial layers are for, to make sure that once you go in with your details, that they are in the right place. You would put them in the correct direction and they would flow with everything around it, and it makes sense. So the initial layers are your roadmap. It's your line. It's going to help you succeed with your future layers. It's absolutely the foundation for your detail layers. And I don't know how to do details. I feel almost naked without my initial base layers before I go in with details. I like to cover basically the area before I do anything, even think about putting details. So, and this just makes the details look more integrated, it looks more natural and actually more realistic, which is what we're going for. So I'm going to go in with my 2H pencil now, and we're going to just continue on, start detailing it out, work around and with the highlights, putting even more fur texture in. So I'm going to start in my usual little spot, work from left to right, and then we're just going to continue building it up. And as you can see, I'm already very satisfied with what we did so long. So sometimes it just flows a lot easier and a lot quicker. You find your groove very quickly. I think a mood plays also a very big role in whether or not how your drawing session will go. I think the longer you just keep at it, you will kind of settle into it a lot better. So I'm just using strokes, just putting in texture, working around. There where it's a bit darker, I'll make more of a shaded immersion with my pencil. And this is just, I'm just using my 2H because it's a good building pencil for those initial layers. So I mean, the appy will also make a very good in-depth tutorial. It's fur, but that's maybe for a bit later, once we've really gotten the groove of things. Maybe did a bit more fur tutorials with a bit more direction and maybe more variations, because that will be quite an intensive tutorial if we do the whole appy. So with these build up of layers, I was also becoming more attentive to my reference, because I've kind of now seen it a lot now, looked at it. I kind of get to know it. It's going to be very important to differentiate between the fur texture over here and the softer, more highlighted texture here on the ear. So sometimes it's easier to draw in those with a bit more defined texture than those that are a bit softer. Because you want to translate that into your drawing as well. I'm going to start a bit more on the softer side. Obviously we haven't really gone to our darkest, so this still isn't as dark as it would be. So it's going to be kind of the same value and tone as the softer, kind of flatter fur of the ear. Also, the hair seems a bit longer on this side than these more fluffed up parts. Just using the pencil to also darken up this area so that it stands out from the surrounding spots as I go in to define those areas as well, just so that we keep everything the way it is. Yeah, I'm being a tad bit more precise because there's kind of a flow and then a dip and then a back up. It's like almost two pieces of fur going over each other. So I just want to be mindful of that I get the direction and the flow of it correct. There we go. So here I'm going to be holding the pencil quite forward, being a bit more direct, as here's quite a bit of change of direction in flow and direction of the fur. And I just want to keep it correct. So that as I build up the layers, I won't lose what I built up. There we go. And also start putting in even more the darker fur details, hair directions. So for the focus tutorials, I would love to turn them all into in-depth tutorials as well. I think it's a very good thing to do. Even if you've practiced only one part, you kind of already seen the reference, you've studied it, you kind of know what to expect, sort of. So that's definitely also a plan that I'm working towards. but in the end that will quite turn into a lot. You can almost do that in the same month. There you go. But just to keep things interesting, you know. There we go. Already looking even better. It's really coming together quite quickly, which I'm very pleased. I'm just taking a brush without anything on it. Just gonna go around in circular motions and just soften everything up even more. There we go. Now I'm gonna take another dark pencil. Let me just pick one. Take a 6B. Give it a nice sharp point. And we're gonna start darkening up in here. And then once we've got this darkened up, we'll start darkening up the rest of the ear. Just gonna take a 2H and just blend that in quickly. Just fill up the little places that the pencil didn't go into the paper. And then we're going to just blend this out underneath here. There we go. And as you can see, it blends in makes the 2H a lot darker, so I'm using my 2H a lot darker than it would be. But that's because you're kind of using the 6B's little residues in the surrounding areas and using it to blend it out. It just helps. There we go. Take my 6B again, and we're just going to continue on what we were doing. To edge and just blend that out. Also gonna just 6B pencil again. 2H. Back in with my 6B. We're just defining our little darkest area. There we go. Back in with your 6B. There we go. 6B pencil again. 2H. Take my 2H now, and we're going to just quite high pressure. We're going to just kind of shade in these areas even more. Obviously we're going to use other pencils as well as highlighters to define it even further. Six B pencil. Soft pressure, remember, we don't want to completely change up the values too much, too drastically, because this is the darkest part. Just softly go in that 6B in these areas here, and then we'll go in with our 2H to define it even more. Bit more pressure here around this little fluff. Start a bit darker and then it will fade out as it goes away from where it originates in the shadow. To H pencil. Just gonna blend that in. We will go in with other B pencils to blend out this area even more and soften it up. Just getting in the texture. There we go. Going back in with my 6B, we're gonna just these little areas here with the darker little bits picking out. Also in here we're gonna just add a teeny weeny bit of 6B as well. Just defining this even more in little areas of shadow. Okay. Take your blending brush, nothing on it, and just circular motions. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to take my 2B pencil and we're just going to kind of work in this general area a bit more. Now I'm going to add a bit more pressure with this 2B pencil to really get a bit of darkness out of it. I'm looking a bit more at the shadows of the drawing, of the reference. A bit more the pieces in between the little hairs. I can also just work on this little bit here as well. Very soft pressure here for this little light bits of hair. So as you can see, this pencil doesn't really make that grainy texture of the darker B pencils, and that's kind of why I'm using it, just for a bit more a blended look, that I don't have to go in with a 2H again or any other H pencil. We'll probably go over top of it, but that will be to add a bit more depth rather than blend it out and add details and things like that, rather than having to use it to blend out the pencil. As we are going into a bit of a different section of the drawing, so I want a bit of a different look and a slightly different approach than to this area per se. A little bit of texture that the 2B pencil does have will help in this general area here with the softer, more blended out parts of fur. So for certain things I'll use a longer stroke, and then around it I will use shorter strokes, just to get that line, and then to around it just to blend it in and blend it out. Using a bit more of the point now to add a bit more of a fur detail. Obviously this area needs to get a bit darker, so I'm going to add a bit more darkness here. So long with the 2B. So I'm using more blending motions for this creating of the deeper value, because we will be going over top of it with other pencils to create the fur details. Add a little bit of texture and definition. Just going back in and creating a bit more depth in here. Keeping my grip quite close. So I want a bit more precision and a shorter stroke on my hair details. we go. Soft pressure again here in this area, adding small little areas of darker bits. Kind of using a back and forth motion sometimes, that will also just add the differentiate not differentiate, distribute the pressure differently of where I put the pencil down and where the darkest bit will be, and that also adds a bit of randomness. It helps not make it look as rigid. Add a bit more definition here for the darker little bits in between. There we go. Back to this area, so we're gonna add a little bit more detail. There we go. I'll add more detail in here with darker pencils. We're just getting it all in place. Here and there adding some with the 2B pencil with a bit more pressure. Not a lot has been done in this little area, so we're going to focus here a bit. Use strokes. There we go. I'm going to take 3B pencil. Sharpen it up a bit, and we're just going to start here at the top. Just going to continue on detailing this out. I'm just going to quickly take a 5H. Just going to fill in that little gap that I haven't put any pencils in yet. Back to my 3B. We're just gonna kind of continue on working our way. As you can see, I'm now working from my darkest to my lightest, from my right to my left. I do switch that up, the direction that I start in, quite often. If I wasn't doing the tutorial, I'd be all over the place. But to keep it a bit more easier to follow, kind of work my way from one side to the other, or stick to one thing for a bit more longer than I normally do. Just to make it a bit easier to follow along. There we go. My last step will obviously be with a highlight, eraser, and obviously my darkest pencil, my 8B, just to reinforce certain things a bit more. Okay, just continuing on with my 3B pencil. Adding in some definition. Little details. Just kind of merging everything here that it doesn't look as like separated. As well as here. There we go. I have to say I quite like drawing darker fur, black fur. I mean, I am a lover of contrasts and really dark shadows and really contrasting highlights. So it's very satisfying for me to draw. So this Rottweiler's ears is quite a fun little thing. I majority of the time prefer drawing something that's not grey, but that's just because I've been drawing for myself, personal preference. These Patreon tutorials is also here to help me get out of my comfort zone and draw things that I don't normally draw, and explore more versions of art. Kind of take what I've learned drawing over the years and apply it, because it's not that different. Obviously there are certain materials and things that I'm not very used to drawing, but yeah, this is a very fun little part. Normally when it comes to like horses' ears, I do not like drawing horses' ears. I usually like to get it over with. It's not my favorite part of the drawing. I don't think it ever will be. But this I'm quite enjoying a lot. So I'm just continuing on with a 3B pencil. Now we're going to start going on a bit here. Start adding a little bit of definition here. Now the reason I'm going in with the 3B here is just for the texture, especially with the light pressure. So I'll be going over it with another pencil and just going over the top of it with a bit of graphite powder. So just for the texture, we'll be going just a little bit of definition. Continue on here. Also at the bottom here as well. Making some places a bit darker where it's a bit more curved and contoured out. There we go. Already very pleased. I would say this is about 75% covered. Things like these generally, so I'm just taking a bit of graphite powder, tap off all the excess on a brush, and I'm just gonna circular motions, just go over the top of everything and smooth it out, especially here. There we go. And this will just give a nice smooth look, a blended look, soft look, take away the roughness of a pencil. And now I'm going to take my mono eraser, clean it up. There you go, give it a nice point. And we're going to add in the highlights. I'm going to start here first. I'm kind of going in because it kind of swirls in here. Just gonna have to put a bit more pressure on my eraser just to erase some of the pencil here because there's lots of layers, and especially the B pencil makes it difficult to erase. So I'm going to add in little highlights in between. There we go. I'm going to point it out quite a lot just to get off the excess pencil. So that I can get nice clean lines. I'm going to start erasing from the top here. I'll clean up that residue there. And I'm going to swoop it in. There we go. And then we'll just take a little bit of my finger. Oh, I love drawing black fur. It's probably the most satisfying and my favorite. especially adding these highlights over the top to emphasize the shine of the fur and add some really nice little details. Definitely my favorite part. If I can draw black horses or dogs or things all the time, I most definitely would. Even a dark bay. So I'm quite enjoying this. Just adding, there we go, a little bit of fluff. And you can see already just these highlights are already adding a lot of definition and little extra little things to look at in the drawing. Really making a big difference in helping it not look so flat. So here I'm going to keep it quite short, just to help with the little textures that are present in this section of the ear. Still got a bit of dark deepening up of things to do in that little corner there. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it short and try to keep it small and more concise. There we go. Okay, should kind of already start to imagine what the ears feel like with the texture. You want to convey that message to the viewer. I mean, I know what their ears feel like. You kind of want to convey that sense of feeling of softness to people that know the breed, or maybe those that have similar breeds. You want the texture to be, they should be able to imagine themselves feeling whatever you're drawing. It should feel soft and flowy. And that's just why I also try to keep the texture soft, to convey a softer feel of the Rotty's ears. Because we all know they've got nice and soft ears. Here we go, just adding more. And I quite like the flow of it already. Can add even more little textures. Even here, there we go. Just gonna clean up a bit there more. There we go. I'm going to take a 2B pencil, make sure it's nice and sharp. Need a bit of a sharper point than that. There we go. And we're just going to continue on layering it up. I'm going to deepen up this part right here a bit more. And also just start detailing out the edge. Now I'm going to be very careful around the highlights that I took out, because I want to kind of preserve them, keep them there, work a bit around them, add a bit of texture inside if they're a little bit big. There you go. The moment it looks a bit spotty and you kind of want to eliminate that spotty look, so I'm going to kind of drag around them with a pencil to give them a bit more definition. We're just going to add a little darkness underneath. Go. Just continue on defining here. Sometimes I'll kind of hone in on one individual strand to really make the forefront of it. But for something this small, I generally group them together and then let one or two stand out. Give them a bit definition. There we go. Still gonna deepen up. Let's deepen up this a bit even more in this little section. Just add a bit of fluffiness to the edge. There we go. I'm stroking it up rather than stroking down. It's just easier for me. It's a bit more control, and it's easier as well to keep the direction of the fur. I do sometimes change it up, but the majority of the time I'll prefer to stroke up than stroke down. There we go. Really liking the now more depth on this side. Adding even a bit more definition here. There we go. Keeping it a bit more shaded technique. There you go. Now we're going to go nice and close to the point, and we're going to add a short strokes of fur texture on this side of the ear. Make it a little bit darker, closer to this little ridge. Add a bit more pressure. Just adding some defining stripes in between. There we go. Bit darker here. Dip. Ah, my words are escaping me. For a bit definition. Go. Very happy with how it's looking so far. The texture, it's really coming on well. Very pleased. Definitely nearing the end. Sometimes fun to do these quick studies of things you will know. You can definitely faff around with anything really and take forever. But this is just really nice. Little quick study of something. I'm just going to take a 5H. I'm just going to work around the edge here a bit, and as well as add some texture within this area as well. I'm using a lot of not a lot of pressure, but quite a high medium pressure with this pencil to really make it useful in this step, so that you can really add and see the texture that the pencil is adding. It won't add depth, so to speak, but it will add texture, and it'll be a subtle addition to the layer. There you go. Continue on. Just going to add a few little strays here and here as well, just so that it's not that cut and dry little shape. There we go. Take your brush, nothing on it, and just soft circular motions. I'll just blend it all in. There we go. Now I'm going to take my very, very dark pencil. I'm going to take my, if I can find my 8B. I'm going to take my 8B pencil. And we are going to add some defining shadows. And we're going to really bump up the contrast. Also just use the pencil just for a little bit of addition of texture. I'm going to use it all over the ear, certain places. It's going to add very nice extra definition. Here's some natural indenting took place when I went over with my H pencils. So I'm just going to use it to my advantage and go over it with the 8B there, as well as the 5H we used before. We'll also add natural indentation to the pencil, to the paper, and that will also just help with adding a bit of texture and going over with these darker pencils. So in this area I'm going to be a bit softer with my application, so I don't need to go that dark. And we're just going to soften it out, make sure it all makes sense. And that its flows are not blocky. I'm going to sharpen it up a bit, just so that I can get a bit of a point for some little hair details here. Very, very soft pressure. I'm really not putting a lot of pressure on the pencil. I'm letting it do its work. It's the darkest pencil we're going to use, so it is going to show up. So I don't need to really go to town with it pressure wise. Just need to define certain little things within the drawing, little shadows within our little fur sections. And then I'm just going to go over with a 2H and just use it to blend in this pencil. Maybe a 5H, still haven't decided. In the reference you will see there are these little darker little pieces that stick out. Quite pleased with that. So I'm going to take my 5H pencil again, and we're going to just blend in that 8B. It's a bit more visible around the drawing, like here for instance. Here we go. And then I'm just going to go over with a final round of highlighting with the eraser. And this little bad boy is then done. So it was quite a quick and simple little tutorial, but uber fun. Let me just get in all the final little pieces. Leave no stone unturned. There we go. Just going to give it a final little brush over. Go, brush, 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 circular motions, soft pressure. Take my mono eraser. I'm going to keep the brush in my close by. I'm just going to add little details. And just use the brush if it's too bright, just to blend it in. It will still be highlighted, just not as out of context with the remainder of the drawing. A little bit of texture with this little down here. There we go. Just a bit of brush over. Back in with the mono eraser. Just diffuse. If it's too bright, you don't want it to, you want it to stand out, but not really stand out though. It's the first thing the viewer sees. It needs to blend in. It just needs to add to the overall picture. You don't ever want a highlight to be so distracting that it's kind of the only thing you see. You want it to kind of blend in with the drawing and create a whole more seamless picture. Just one final little touch, kind of going to be just define a bit of this even more. Changing up the direction of my strokes. Here we go. Really pleased with how this is looking. I hope you are too with your version. It's actually quite relaxing, meditating. There we go. Let me just give it a one little final look. Over. See how I feel. Clean up edges. Get rid of all these eraser little bits and bobs. There we go. Even more sea daisy. Graphite really does get everywhere. I think if you work on charcoal, it's exactly the same. So, just going to sign it. There we go. There it is, all done. I do hope you enjoyed that. So this was quite a quick one. I think it's what, 2 hours. So this is a very nice little example of a short hair with a bit of flowy and nice contrast, nice movement. Really goes with the contour of the face. It was quick, it was simple. I think it was I really enjoyed it, especially with the darker fur. It does help you see your values a lot better without having to tweak the reference too much and really having to think about it. You can see the movement of the fur, you can see the direction of fur. I really quite enjoyed it. I hope you did too. And I'll see you for the next one. Happy creating!